Hey everyone, welcome to Valrex Gaming, and today, due to a request literally from just one comment down in my comments bar, we're gonna do a Polytopia tribe tier list and look at their strengths and weaknesses a little bit. So if you have any questions or things that you want me to do, just put it in the comments. I really want to do what you want me to do. So let's dive into this. As you can see here, this tribe list is kind of what's normal for most people, right? But there's been some changes to the game since tribe lists like this have been around, like roads and, oh boy, forestry has been nerfed, Aquarion has been completely reworked. So let's get into what I think. In the past, I generally did support a list like this, but we're gonna take a look at a new list today. And for that, I really like the format that a YouTube channel called Macro does, where S tier means that it's so good it's like busted and needs to be nerfed. All developers should be striving to make their tribes A tier, right? Balanced so that they're all usable. And I'm happy to report that I think a lot of the tribes in Polytopia all have a place. And like B tier are niche uses where like you can, if you use them on certain maps, they're going to be super good. And that's another caveat to this tier list, is that every tribe kind of performs a little differently depending on the map type, like archipelago, water world, lakes, continents, and things like that. Drylands, right? Like Kickoo sucks on drylands. It's bottom tier because they start with a water technology that you wouldn't research anyways on a drylands map. Same kind of goes for Aquarion, because they're a water-based tribe, but at least the buffs that they had made them more viable on drylands, and I think that's what Mijuan was really going for, and I think they did a pretty good job. So what this list is just for a very high-level overview of all the tribes. So we're just gonna go in alphabetical order here on this tier list, and the first one's Imo. And I really do like Imo. I love the culture that they have, I like the skins, and I do like the technology philosophy, which is a little easier to get with Imo, but they start with meditation, which is definitely, bar none, the worst technology you can start with in the entire game because it does nothing other than the award for pacifist if you don't make an attack for 5 turns. And if you're playing on a big map, you're not going to encounter your opponent. That can help you in the beginning, but that technology still gets overshadowed by other tribes who have technologies that let them start out. So in the span that you can spend leveling up your city for 5 turns, like Imperius or Bardur, Imo has to just sit and wait for their altar of peace. So not as good. I put Imo on C tier, needs buffs, because to compete with some of those other tribes, they really need to be able to compete on an economic footing and be able to go and purchase other technologies that helps them to contend with other opponents who will get more units, faster riders, and all that stuff. Because if you look at Imo's weaknesses here in resources, Imo has significantly higher chance of getting mountains, which eats up its territory, makes it harder to traverse, and then their crop rate is reduced as well. And so you don't get to have as much, I mean, farming isn't really an option as much. That, when I've played Imo, I feel like the forests and fruit are also pretty reduced as well, that you don't encounter them as much in your cities. So they're not as resource rich. But if you're able to use a good strategy like getting philosophy, so all of your technologies are discounted, that's a really big boon for you, as well as sneakily using mind benders. Because mind benders can not only heal, but convert enemy units as well. And a lot of people play 1v1 maps, and that's why Imo is also pretty low compared to others. But if you're playing on a map where you can conceal your mind bender and an opponent inadvertently just moves them within range, you can get them, and now you've not only taken away a unit, but you've also gained your own. And that's a really good conversion, and I've done that on some games. I love Imo. And I think for them to, compared to other tribes, they need to be buffed. And again, I don't know the way that we're gonna try and buff tribes, but I do think that Justini Linguini had a great idea to just simply mess around with their starting stars. So Imo could start with more starting stars. And that's a pretty simple way to do that. Next on the list is Aquarion, and I love the Aquarion update that they've done. I put Aquarion in A tier because now they have the speed with bubbles to get where they need to go. They have units that are completely unique and strong in their own right without being too overpowered. Like sharks with a high cost and lower defense at 2 and a high attack at 3.5. They serve a unique niche. So I think that Aquarion, all things considered, is pretty balanced. They're a fantastic pick for maps like Archipelago or Waterworld, right? Where they just thrive on the water. Archipelago more so because of like that mix of land and water, because now Aquarion has fertilized. They don't even have to grow trees and then burn them first to get farms. They just throw farm land down wherever they want for cheaper. But it has to be flooded land. That's the only caveat with that. But you start with flooded land around you, so it's great. Love Aquarion. If you look at their resource rates, they don't start with a whole lot of forests, which is fine, but everything else is base stats. Standard spawn rates on everything else. And I really never felt like I've had too much of a problem with ecoing with Aquarion. That, and then you can get really creative with putting stuff on water, including deep sea tiles. You can put anything out there, which is fantastic. Next, one of the free tribes is Bardur, and they're also, I think, very balanced. There was a nerf targeted directly at them because Bardur Rider Roads was almost unbeatable. Because Bardur could get hunting and they could level up quickly. They had all those forests that they could get defense bonuses on, and then they could use their roads and riders to get around exactly where they needed. Bardur was a force to be reckoned with previously until forestry and roads got leveled up to 3 stars each. And because of that, I haven't played them too much, because now that forestry is an expensive technology in the sense that it costs 3 stars to set them up. I haven't played them so much, but my friends play Bardur all the time. They're a wonderful free tribe, and they still, I mean, look at their resource rates. Bardur gets more fruit, but no farms. But all that means is that you just don't worry about farms. Go for sawmills. And when you get mathematics, you get catapults. So you can really focus on some other really good technologies. And then if you have to, you can get spiritualism and grow your forests and burn forests and make your own farms that way. But Bardur has never struggled when it comes to resources. They're a T0 tribe. You'll start with 2 bears right off the bat, guaranteed. And because of that, you can get a really good solid footing right at the beginning, making 4 stars per turn right on turn 0. Bardur has been great. And the only weakness I think now is that cost of forestry. If you're not leveling up your cities appropriately, that can hurt you. But other than that, there really isn't too many drawbacks to using Bardur, other than that you can't have farms. But like I said, then just don't buy farms. All right, now it's time for the controversial one, which is Cymanti. Cymanti is a powerhouse of a tribe, and I put them in S tier because it feels like almost half the time you're running into a Cymanti player, they are crushing you because they have fantastic early game ability to really take up space and do a lot of damage with hexapods, and they can do really good in the mid game as well with fast units and poison damage, that and the fungi slowing down enemy units within their own territory. They do struggle in the late game because other units like knights and catapults can really take out Cymanti, and that's their only bane, right? That's the way you take them out. Or you just outrider them. I've seen that technique as well, where they have hexapods, but you have riders and you just use rider roads to counter them. And that works pretty nicely, but the majority of players who are encountering a Cymanti player really struggle against them because they're so different from every other tribe. I don't know how you would nerf Cymanti, really, because there's a lot of people calling for buffs or nerfs with Cymanti, and I really do agree with a lot of people that say they can't be good at everything, right? They can't be good at mid, early, and late game. So I think their dominance in early game can be balanced with that stars thing, right? Where they just don't start with as many stars. Maybe slows them down just a little bit from getting hexapods on usually like turn 3 or turn 4 with their technologies. Something like that, but they are a fantastically strong tribe if you know how to play them. We will definitely be coming out with a Cymanti guide on how to beat Cymanti, because you're just going to keep running into them more and more. And looking at their resource rates as well, interestingly enough, they don't have farms as well. 0 farmland. Instead, it's replaced with fungi, as it should, because fungi is their unique resource. Mountains doesn't hurt as much because a lot of their units can just overcome terrain like that anyways. It's more helps them insulate against enemies, but it does take up, resource spots. So, but I've never heard a Cymanti player complain that they don't have enough resources, because fungi is a fantastic leveling tool. Getting 3 population on 1 square tile, it's unmatched as far as being able to quickly upgrade cities. That's why you see Cymanti cities always so big, right? And that's why their units cost so much. Cymanti is a fantastic tribe. Next up is Elyrion. I think that Elyrion is pretty awesome, and I put them in balanced. I think that they are also a really good early game tribe, and they can contend really well in late game too. The Polytars are very strong on attack, but super weak on defense, right? So if you see an Elyrion player and you see their Polytars, hit them, because you're gonna get more value for hitting them than for them coming and hitting you back. And if you hit them first, they can't really do that much damage back to you because now their health is less. Elyrion is also really great in late game when the dragons get online, and you can use those along with knights to really clear the field. Your splash damage with your dragon softens everyone up, and your knights just plow through everything. Really great strategy for Elyrion players. The only thing that they struggle with, as they should, is with economy, relying on sanctuaries to make stars as sort of like a pseudo markets, but because they can't cut trees down, trees are permanent. So that's how that pros and cons happens with them, right? That's how you balance. They have a pro and they have a con. No forest cutting because they love trees, but they have really heavy hitting polytars and the ability to quickly convert some money and make some units with sanctuaries. Taking a look at Elyrion's resource rate, they have less mountains, which in my book is a better thing because that's easier to move around. And they have a higher rate of farms, which they should also have, but they also do get a lot of forests. I mean, if you didn't have a lot of forests, you wouldn't be able to do your sanctuaries appropriately. And I always like to put my sanctuaries on mountains because mountains are useless otherwise. And farms are everywhere as well. I don't think Elyrion players have had too much of a trouble with how many resources they have. It's just how you use that resource is the big question for them. I have heard a buff before that was requested for them, is like being able to build anything on tree tiles, like a forge, or even still, they get markets, and it'd be nice to be able to build those on forest tiles as well. You know, being able to be one with the trees instead of them getting in the way. Higher level players I know have been able to deal with it. It would be easier for lower level players to work with them, but that could also be a game-breaking change as well if they're able to build on trees. So, in my opinion, Elyrion is balanced. Next up, we have Hoodrick, and I think Hoodrick could use some buffs as well. They've always kind of struggled against some of the other tribes. It is nice to start off with a defense bonus running around, but trying to explore with that archer right off the bat leaves a lot to be desired because of how weak they are. And once you get caught out in the open by a warrior, even if you move away, they just chase you down and hit you again, and your archer's toast. But they have tons of forests. In fact, if you look at Hoodrick's resource rates, they get even more trees than anyone else, and less mountains, therefore more trees. So you're definitely gonna wanna use forestry and sawmills. And what sucks is they were already like C tier before, according to most people, and then the nerf came and nerfed forestry, hurt Hoodrick all over again. And so Hoodrick can't really seem to catch a break. But if you're able to smartly use forestry, chop in the right places to get resources into you, and sawmill, you can get the ball rolling. But because you have to go and buy hunting to start off with hunting so you don't waste your hunting, and then you have to go and get forestry right after that. That's what makes them harder to use right at the beginning. But if you're able to distance yourself from your opponents and level up how you need to, you can be okay. I have used Hoodrick before to a great effect in a big free-for-all game, using my defense bonus to move warriors around and using my archers to stave off some other units that might cause me trouble. And you have to watch out for riders, because riders can come and hit you pretty hard as well. But that's why they do need a buff. If there was a way to make it so forestry for them, so like lumber huts were only 2 stars again for them, I think they'd come back. Or again, increase their starting stars so that they can afford a starting tech and start leveling up just like other tribes. That might be a thing. But if you ask me, I think if we could take them back to the old style of 2 stars for a lumber hut, that would put them at balanced again, because they'd still have to research it, they'd have to hit hunting, and they'd have to get forestry while leveling up studies, and that still takes time. So right now, they really do need buffs to be good. Next up is good old Imperius, top of A tier, because Imperius is the quintessential Polytopia tribe. They are the default tribe. They used to be the one that they had just base starting values. There was no ups or downs on their starting values, but that's changed now. But they're another T0 tribe. But they get to upgrade their capital on turn 0 and start making 4 stars per turn. And organization is also a great tech, because you can go either into farming for more leveling, or you can go into strategy for better defense, and diplomacy for cloaks. Imperius has always been known as the powerhouse for resources. If you look at their resource rates, they've got double the rate of fruit. And that's crazy. And sure, their hunting has been lowered, but that's because they want Imperius to focus on their organization technology and the things that synergize with that. So you can level up quickly, and then you can go and buy other technologies, and you can have access to any other number of strategies right after that. But being able to level up there and then having a quick door over to diplomacy, which in itself is kind of an expensive strategy to go with cloaks. Imperius has always been a great tribe, and they are balanced. They're at the top of A tier in my opinion. If you don't know what to do, if you're just starting Imperius, you just go with that default tribe and you'll be good. Next up is Kickoo. And Kickoo, in my opinion, is also a balanced tribe. They are meant for the water. Because of all the updates they've done, putting ports as a base technology for them, it has made them very good, but they struggle in some of the other maps, like dry. Actually, they can't even really contend on dry lands. Pangea, they'd be pretty good. Yeah, they're pretty good because they can get on the water really fast. And Kickoo also has fantastic resource rates. Huge fish opportunities, reduced mountains, which means there's more just open land for you to cultivate and not have to avoid running around mountains. In fact, I think I'd even put Kickoo above Elyrion, but not quite Aquarion. No, they're above Aquarion. Kickoo was my first purchase tribe so that I could start playing multiplayer, because I had done my research as far as what tribe should I get that's really good. I was looking at a lot of tier lists back in the day, and Kickoo was always at the top because of their dominance on the water. And the updates only made them better with putting ports, immediate access to those. So anywhere there's water, Kickoo is gonna do really good. The more water, the better. If you're on lakes and you start with a really small lake, you're not really ecoing that fast, but you can come back from it. Next up is Luxidoor, which again is one of my favorite tribes because I think they look so cool, especially the Almuk skin that changes the terrain black and sparkly and everybody's carrying gold items. Wonderful skin. I love to play it, but holy cow, Luxidoor also cannot catch a break when it comes to competing against the other tribes. You would think in theory starting with a leveled up city would be fantastic as their starting gimmick, right? But they don't start with any technology. So now you have to go and research a basic technology so you can start leveling up, and your basic city is only making 3 stars per turn, which is better than 2, but sadly it's not better than 4, which a lot of the other tribes can do. At least the top tribes like Imperius, Bardur, Kickoo, and even Cymanti, which can also get up there with their spores. You don't get to choose that starting technology. You don't get to either choose early exploration or get a workshop again for that starting stars. So most people really don't like to play Luxidoor. It sucks for Luxidoor because sure, the theory is that you'd be able to buy the technology that suits the resources around you, but then that also kind of pigeonholes you into that technology as well. And then you go and find other cities, and guess what? They don't have those resources in spades. Now they actually need hunting instead of organization, which you already bought. So now you got to buy another technology. They also don't have any better things. They're actually now the baseline for resources. As you can see, no difference. The code is the same for them when it comes to fruit, forests, farms, animals. It's all the same. And so Luxidoor is one that, like Xin-Xi recommended, that they have a significantly higher starting star count. And that would even fit with their theme being the richest people on the square, right? Where they really hoard their wealth, like the Almec skin people show, but they're the richest, right? They're the best merchants. They're all about money. So why not start with more starting stars so that when they choose the technology they decide to side with, that they're not punished for it, that they can level up their cities and be right there in contention with the other tribes and make them balanced. So that's why for me, Luxidoor needs the most amount of buffs. They need the most amount of help, because playing them versus other tribes, if you're on equal footing with each other, Luxidoor will lose most of the time because they just can't compete with the economics of others, which is weird, right? Because Luxidoor should be able to economically be with the other tribes according to the lore. Next is Omaji. I also really like Omaji. The Condor skin is really good, and I put them in B tier. They're very niche. They're a fast tribe, right? They get on those riders and they can quickly overwhelm opponents. They're actually a really good counter to Cymanti because of how they start with riders. They start with one, and they can go and start dealing damage, taking away boosted enemies, or at least taking away the boost ability, right? And hunting down that shaman and wiping out hexapods with one hit and then running away. They're fantastic at that. The problem with Omaji is they're in the middle of an arid desert, and everybody knows that. They have significantly reduced resource counts, way reduced forests, way reduced animals. At least they still get quite a bit of farms, so you usually end up going to organization for ecoing, but that then means that you're not going to go and get mathematics as much. If the game goes long enough, you certainly will. They need maybe a slight tweak, if that. They're at the top of B tier for me, right? And we'll see what the other B tiers will be, but Omaji is a great tribe, they really are. They just, again, struggle against the more economically viable tribes, and if you get tough enough units, you can counter their riders with swords and shields, things with better defense. The only thing that would make them better is maybe they start with one extra star, and that's it. And maybe they actually do deserve to be in A tier, because they are really a good tribe. You really should try them out, and you really should play them. But for me, that's where they fit, just the top of B tier, being really good at countering some of the other slower tribes or weaker tribes, but not really standing against the A tier tribes. Though I guess they'd go against Elyrion pretty nicely because they can hit Polytars really hard. Next up is Polaris, and I put Polaris also in B tier. I don't know if they're gonna get a rework at some point, and I think they should, but Polaris is, let's just look at actually they don't get a resource spawn rate, right? They get what everybody else gets because they're gonna go and convert everyone's land to theirs. So if you look at their webpage, nothing, right? Resources, it's nothing. I think they generally start with 2 fruit. I've started on a lot of maps with them with 2 fruit, but then their other cities is whoever you're going against. The rest of the map will be them. And if everyone's Polaris, it will be Imperius with base stats. It's not gonna be Imperius with a whole bunch of fruit, supposedly, if the webpage is to be believed. But Polaris is a great tribe. They fit their description really well, being the snowball tribe, right? Where they are the best late game tribe if you don't slow Polaris down, they will take you out because they will cover the entire map in ice, and they do need water to thrive. Drylands, terrible, right? There's no ice, so they can't use their skate ability. They can't use ice market or the ice bank. They can't use the ice bank. And so they're hosed on maps like Drylands. And then Pangea, they can kind of start to get that water around. I've won with some Pangea maps with them, but it's hard to try and cut through the middle where there is no water because they're made to skate. Lakes, continents, archipelago is where their bread and butter is, where it's a mix of land and water. Waterworld is okay, but the problem is that ships are so fast that when you start to encounter enemy boats, they come and just break your ice so fast, and you can't go and make your ice fast enough. And you don't have naval units that can rival like a bomber, right? You trying to build the ice so that you can smack them, it just takes too long. So Waterworld, they're not that great, but everything else, man, they can really get up quickly. Because of all of this naval rework stuff, this is why I put them in, they need a little kind of buff. Maybe like giving the ice fortress like 1 extra range or something like that, because they don't have battleships, they don't get bombers, they don't get rammers, they don't get scouts. So trying to like reveal fog and then convert it into ice is a really painstaking process, which kind of leads to them losing. And especially because now everybody can move and break ice. That was also kind of a nerf to them. Maybe another little thing could be that bring that button back to the Mooney that lets them freeze without having to move. Because right now they have to move to freeze, where they used to be that you hit the button and it would freeze. Auto freezing is great. Moving and auto freezing is great, but if the spot where they're currently at is the best and most advantageous spot, and now you have to move to either freeze an enemy or run away, they're actually just gonna die. So it'd be better to just make it so they can actually, like the Gami, bring it back where they can just spot freeze where they're at. But yeah, Polaris, again, a great tribe. They are probably the next tribe to get a skin. Those Cymanti could get one too, you never know. Next up is Quetzali, and weirdly enough, when I play Quetzali, I almost always get them when I hit random, right? And I'm supposed to get a random tribe, but the last 10 games, 5 of them, I was Quetzali, totally random. So the game really seems to make me want to play Quetzali, so I've played a lot with them. As I researched for this, I didn't really feel the fact that I had a reduced farm rate, but it's true. You have a reduced farm rate because you actually get ×2 on your crops, which is great. So you get organization, you start researching, but then trying to go to farming doesn't make so much sense because there's not so many farms, but there's quite a bit of trees. So Quetzali is pretty good on resources, but because they don't start with a research technology to let them tap into those resources right away, the beginning is super slow. Their opening moves usually is just start moving your defender around until you find a city. Before you start capturing cities, you have to go and research, but then you don't have enough stars to actually use that research, so the next turn you're actually using it. So they just start really slow. But I think Quetzali is one of the best when you're in a densely packed free-for-all map, or even team battles, because you can send over peace treaties and you guys can share territory. Quetzalis are like the best friends of the square, right? Where they partner well with others in team battles. They have a quick way into diplomacy, and you can start using that if you're doing like really dense maps with lots of people. Probably pretty easy to get 100,000 points in perfection with them. But as far as playing against other people, I put them in C tier just because of how slow and sluggish it is to get up and going with them. If they could start with some more stars, that's all they would need, and we'd probably be right back up at A tier. They would be in contention with those other tribes who are already beating them economically, and economics is the way to win, right? More stars means more units or better units, either way, quantity or quality. That beats not having anything like Quetzali does usually. Next up is Vengir, and for some reason a lot of people call Vengir the meme tribe because they're just in there to be funny. And unfortunately, I do agree that they are one of the worst. But I would probably take, oh man, it really depends on the map, because at least Vengir has some good niche opportunities for them. because they start with swordsmen, which means they have the strongest early game, right? You run into a Vengir right off the bat and their swordsman could probably start taking you out, no questions asked. But man, their resource, because of that strong beginning, their resource rates are abysmal. Pulling up their resource rates, diminished crop, diminished hunting, diminished fish. At least they get more metal, but guess what? You have to go and research climbing, and then you have to research mining. Even though you start with swords, it doesn't let you go to that middle tech. You have to go climbing and then that. And because you can't farm, I guess you can farm, they do have farms, but you have to research organization first before you can get farmed. And so because your basic stuff, your tier 1 research is hampered, you are so slow at getting to the other stuff. And as they should, because I guess swordsmen are super strong, but everybody knows that you're throwing if you're playing Vengir for the most part, unless you're playing really small maps, quick games, or mirror matches. Vengir needs something to bring them out of the pit to make them competitively viable. It's really appealing to have swordsmen right off the bat, but once you start getting to play them, you notice like, it's hard to build cities with these guys. And everyone's out ecoing me. So that's the problem you run into with Vengir, and that's why they're bottom. Next up is Xin-Xi. And to me, they lead the C tier in the needs buffs. It's a really good technology as far as like exploration. I think they do pretty good in single player when you just pop up on a mountain and you can explore and you can discover tribes. They do really good at 100,000 point perfection. But when you go and play against your friends, you feel like you have to get mining and level up through mining and then get swordsmen. But then you're still lacking in the economics of others. Let's look at their resource rates. They have a higher mountain and higher mining, which is great, and then forges. It's just really expensive technology that's really not optimized for leveling up cities because it costs 5 stars to get 2 population points, whereas fruit and hunting can do it better, which is why Bardur and Imperius have always been better than Xin-Xi. Now, don't get me wrong, I've seen really good stuff come from Xin-Xi, but not everybody is like as thrilled to play them as others. They have a cool culture in the lore, but when it comes to actually fighting other tribes, they're just slower, right? I think they're better than the other C tier tribes because they can get on mountains quickly, they can get the defense bonus, they can get to swordsmen somewhat fast, but swordsmen alone don't win games. You gotta use some of the other stuff like riding, knights, archers, catapults, and if there's water, you gotta use water units. And so swordsmen alone can't do the winning for you, and even then it's expensive to get there. But when it comes to like this lineup, like Xin-Xi versus Hoodrick, I think Xin-Xi wins. Overall, pretty good, but again, they need some buffs. You could do it with starting stars, but they're just not optimized for resources because they're locked up on mountains. Next is Yaddak, and I do like Yaddak, but I put them in B tier because again, they're another niche tribe because of their quick expansion, but they're not as fast as Omaji, who doesn't have to build roads and they get to move 2 spaces. But Yaddak can have a really good starting move with moving, connecting your cities and leveling them up through connecting cities. Their resource rates are great with fruit, at least. They are increased fruit, but they're decreased forests and decreased mountains, which means less ore that you could get from them. And a normal baseline of animals, but guess what? Animals only spawn on forest tiles. So by extension of reducing their forest count, you also reduce their animal count. And so they've kind of somewhat struggled economically as well against other tribes. They are the tribe that you say, no, I'm doing rider roads, right? Because you've already started with roads, so you get riders and you start really using those to expand quickly and try to level up your cities while you're going, but they just haven't been able to level up their cities as quickly as some of the other tribes who start with a good baseline tech, can level up, then buy roads, and now they're the same as Yaddak, but they had a better starting point. But overall, you use Yaddak to move around quickly. Again, the nerf that nerfed forestry also nerfed roads, and now roads are 3 stars. So it might actually be better to take them back to being 2 stars per road like it was before, and they're the only ones that get it because that's them, right? They're the best road builders on the square. That is their lore. They are road builders. And so if we give them that special opportunity to just be the best at road building, because their resource rates are still somewhat low, I think that puts them way up there in A tier. We might have to see if it puts them in S tier and now they're too good, and so then you have to take it away from them. But if you can do things specific per tribe, just like special tribes, why not let them be the ones who thrive with roads? And that makes them, I think that would balance them out really nicely. And the last and certainly not least is Zebasi. I also put Zebasi in B tier, just under Yaddak, because Zebasi is interesting because they are a T0 tribe. You start with farming, you have farms around you, first turn you can get your workshop, but it takes all your stars to do so. And now the warrior that you could buy at some other points just isn't there. Or you're at least just 1 star, you're lagging 1 star behind on Imperius and Bardur. And if you look at the resource rates, they have reduced resource rates across the board. Less mountains, which by extension means less ore, less forests, less fruit. That's on all of these different routes that have now been nerfed so that they can't eco as well. I have recommended them to some of my friends as their first tribe to buy, other than Kickoo, because at least Zebasi can still do well on all the map types, but they're just like a somewhat weaker form of Imperius, and that feels bad to say because their skin is, the Anzala skin is super fun and colorful. They are still good, don't get me wrong. That's why they're on B tier, right? They're still a good tribe. They just need something a little bit more to make them just as viable as the others, to put them on the same footing, because they're just 1 star lagging behind against these other tribes that can eco really fast. A good strategy with Zebasi is utilizing your farms so that you can then go and get markets and start using your farms and windmills to make markets. But again, that takes a lot of stars and time to get up to. So when you're playing Zebasi, it's probably good to play them on maps that have more breathing space, right? If it's gonna be a small, tiny map and you're gonna be running into opponents right off the bat, you might be just a little bit behind if you're going against some of the A tier or S tier tribes. And that is it for my tribe tier list. This will probably be updated whenever they make an update, and I'll go back and talk about it some more. This is where I think it stands right now. It's a great thing they did with Aquarion. Aquarion needed that buff. They were down in D tier before all of this started. Nobody wanted to play them, not even on like Water Worlds, because they were just so slow. Let me know in the comments what you think about this tribe tier list and your own tribe tier list. I'd love to take a look at it. Again, these are my opinions and what I think about it. And this is a game, so it's not like there's a right or wrong way to think about this. Hopefully my comments about what should be nerfed and buffed can reach the right ears and to cause more thought-provoking experiences with the way these tribes should be balanced. But overall, Polytopia is a pretty balanced game. You see they're right there, all in the middle. What's fantastic is some of the really good tribes are free. That's another reason why I recommend this game so much to my friends, because the free tribes are great. They're fantastic. So if you want to start playing online with friends, it just costs you $1 to get one of the other tribes, probably Kickoo or Zebasi. Or if you want to be extra fancy, you can spend $2 and get Elyrion or Aquarion, like some of my friends have. But you don't have to spend a whole bunch of money buying a whole bunch of tribes, because at least the free tribes are amazing. And I promise as you play this game, you'll love to play it so much that eventually you'll probably find yourself buying some of the other tribes so that you can go and play in multiplayer and single player. So we'll see you next week for Monday's video. So thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if this is good, and we will see you next week on Monday.